So in my last video on this lawsuit, I concentrated on the case of James Damore. But as mentioned in that video, there's another party that is named in the complaint, that of David Guterman. And it's his case I want to concentrate on here. So Guterman worked for Google for approximately 3 years, from October 2013 to December 2016, when he was fired. Now, Guterman is described as a conservative, a Caucasian, and a male, which basically makes him the living incarnation of evil. The lawsuit claims that Guterman was discriminated against and harassed and ultimately fired on the basis of these characteristics. So in August 2015, Kim Burchett, an L7 SWE manager, drafted and published a document on a Google employees only website entitled Derailing. This document discussed how individuals might attempt to silence someone's opinions or distract from someone's point of view. The document was aimed at Caucasian males and conflated marginalization with white male privilege. The document essentially claimed through examples that any response but agreement to a statement about bias, prejudice, or privilege was a derailment, reductio ad absurdum. The thesis of this document is that on this one particular set of topics, the left-wing political frame of systemic bias must always dominate, and the receiver must accept that frame and its associated worldview in their response. Now, this Kim Burchett is a real piece of work. There are numerous screenshots of her open intolerance of views that don't conform to the cult of diversity. For example, this one where I guess I shouldn't be assuming a gender, but I will for the purposes of this video. This one where she ponders the creation of a blacklist for those who aren't supportive of diversity. I'm considering creating a public inside Google document of people who make diversity difficult. Please share here any suggestions, criticisms, or words of warning. I am thinking of something like a Google Doc that accepts comments and which calls out those Googlers who repeatedly made public statements that are unsupportive of diversity, with links to those statements so that readers can decide for themselves. The list will be open to contributions from others, but I personally will be the judge of what is included and what is excluded. I will do my best to represent the individuals fairly, compassionately, and in context. Well, I'm sure you're capable of that, self-appointed arbiter of morality. Here's another tolerant post about the racial and gender makeup of various committees she served on. In the T5-T6 promo committee I served on, 2 out of 4 committee members were women. Yay! 4 out of 4 committee members were white. Boo! 12 out of 15 candidates were white men. Boo! Yay and boo? What are you, 6 years old? Here she is again with more diversity ideas. Here's a suggestion from my wife. I think only women and people of colour should be allowed to make hiring decisions at Google for a year, and or randomly assign a third of each position type to only be hired by women, people of colour, or unselected type. Look at the resulting hiring data. Google likes experiments? Do an experiment. Why not, even if it's completely illegal and discriminatory? Anyway, so Guterman, along with many other employees, objects to the document that claims you must accept white male privilege as unassailable truth, and that any disagreement with such proclamations is an attempt at derailment. Guterman says, men need to understand that Caucasian males are the victims of a racist and sexist political movement, and it's not their fault. Guterman went on to state that the point of this document is to disallow any defence at all that a man might make when some woman complains about bias. There is no defence. The woman is always right. Where have you heard that before? The man has no alternative but to submit to her superior moral position. We have a word for that attitude. It's called sexism. Spot on. Guterman went on to make the very apt analogy of comparing the document to that which slave owners would have written for their slaves to help them better understand how to interact with their masters. And so what did the tolerant Burchett do? She escalated the comment to management, and she reported Googlers that disagreed with the thesis of her document, as Guterman did to Google management as being ungoogly. I mean, really? Is that a word? I mean, this is like a 6-year-old saying, I'm telling on you. The upshot of it is that Guterman gets called into HR and is chastised for standing up for males and conservative views and given a verbal warning. Now, as you can imagine, at a social justice echo chamber like Google, the election of Donald Trump triggered the ideological Puritans into a panic state. Here are some quotes. I have a hard time understanding what reasons someone could have for supporting Trump that override the fact that 1. The KKK supports Trump, and 2. Trump has said hurtful and cruel things about Muslims, Mexicans, disabled folks, women, etc. Then someone quite reasonably asks, One theory about why all the polls and predictions were so wrong is because people supporting Trump were afraid to express their opinions for fear of retaliation. Is there anything Google can do to help achieve a world where nobody is afraid to voice their opinions? Which elicits this wonderfully open-minded response: if their opinion is racism, why do they deserve to have their voices amplified? Ah, yes, of course.
They're racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
Anyway, Guterman responds to the Trump election panic with this post. It's ironic how many of the comments support the premise of the question. Anyone who believes President Trump will be out to get minorities, women or gays has absorbed a lot of serious lies from their echo chamber. And their echo chamber is entirely one-sided. You can't watch TV or go to movies without being constantly confronted with the leftist worldview. Leftists can go their whole life never being exposed to the conservative worldview except in shows written by people hostile to it. Guterman also stated in response to another Google employee that if you truly think Trump is anything like a Nazi or ISIS or wants to hurt gays, women or the disabled, then you are so badly out of touch it borders on delusional. If you don't truly believe those things but are saying them anyway, then shame on you for trying to stir up fear and hatred. At around the same time, another Google employee, Samad Gilani, posted the following message on an internal forum. As someone already targeted by the FBI, including at work, for being a Muslim, I'm worried for my personal safety and liberty. Will Google take a public stand to defend minorities and use its influence, or just issue the usual politically nuanced statements about our values? Guterman responded, in the administration of the most pro-Muslim president in history, you were targeted just for being a Muslim? Why didn't you file a civil rights suit? The Justice Department would take your side if it really happened. Guterman further stated that at the suggestion of another Googler, he searched Gilani's story of being profiled and found zero evidence for the claim that Gilani was targeted just for being a Muslim. Guterman posed more questions about the FBI's motives for looking into Gilani, such as the fact that Gilani had recently visited Pakistan and that the FBI could have possibly found something interesting about Gilani's trip or the region that he visited. Now, of course, this is blasphemy to question a minority, and so another one of these 6-year-old tattletales escalated the thread. Guterman had another conversation with another Google employee on November 10th, where he complained about being a conservative and a Trump supporter. Guterman pointed out that Trump supporters are a hated and despised minority at Google. Googlers feel comfortable slandering them in a public forum and assume there will be no consequences. Guterman's comment was met with anger and accusations of him gaslighting instead of having genuine concerns. Then around December 5th, 2016, Google HR reached out to Guterman to discuss his comments, including those surrounding Gilani's post. Google HR stated that Guterman had accused Gilani of terrorism based on Gilani's religion, and this was unacceptable. As a result of Guterman's accusations, Google stated that he was being terminated. Yeah, that's right. Questioning someone about their claims of victimization for which they provide no evidence is the same as accusing them of terrorism, apparently. Now, the complaint doesn't end there. It goes on for another almost 30 pages listing punishments doled out to those that questioned the social justice orthodoxy like Guterman and James Damore did. Most of this was because of being a white male or holding conservative viewpoints or just disagreeing with the diversity agenda. One of the more bizarre incidents was a blacklist of conservative authors. On August 26, 2016, Curtis Yarvin, a well-known conservative blogger who has reportedly advised Steve Bannon, Peter Thiel and other members of the Trump administration, visited the Google office to have lunch with an employee. This triggered a silent alarm, alerting security personnel to escort him off the premises. It was later discovered that other influential conservative personalities, including Alex Jones and Theodore Beale, are also on the same blacklist. On or about September 15, 2016, a Google employee asked HR if the writers could be removed from the blacklist. HR refused to help with the request and instead reconfigured the internal system so that it was no longer possible to see who was on the blacklist. Just think about the level of paranoia and fragility that takes. You work at Mountain View, California, in one of the most privileged work environments known to humanity, and you have an alarm system that gets triggered when a conservative pundit sets foot on campus. And that is absolutely stunning. In another blatant example of sexism, a Google employee complained about a post from another employee, which read, "If you put a group of 40-something white men in a room together and tell them to come up with something creative or innovative, they'll come back and tell you how enjoyable the process was and how they want to do it again. But they come up with fuck all as a result." The Google employee stated that this statement was a violation of the Google Code of Conduct and was creating a hostile workplace environment as it targeted Caucasians, males, and individuals over the age of 40. Google HR responded, "Given the context of the post and that the employee's main point is to highlight that it is helpful to have diverse perspectives, now HR are acting as mind readers, it doesn't appear that the post violates our policies." Amazing of how accepting they are of viewpoint diversity when it conforms to their social justice orthodoxy. Perplexed, the Google employee responded to Google HR by replacing the term 40-something white men with women and asked how that was not a breach of conduct. Google failed to respond. Of course they didn't, because they'd have to acknowledge their own overt sexism. So again, I encourage you to read through this document. It really is eye-opening to say the least. As always, leave your comments below, and if you happen to be an IT graduate currently studying at university, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on working for Google after hearing the revelations in this lawsuit. I'll see you next time.